The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
Today's topic is making faith your own, and I'm joined by a very special guest, Gabrielle Black, who is the youth pastor at our Scottsdale campus. Thank you for being here.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so I've known you for many years, since you were a child, right? Fine arts and youth and all those things, because you're close to one of my daughter's age.
Right.
So, but before we get into our topic, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us who you are, just on a personal level, anything you want to share.
Yeah, like Debbie said, my name is Gabrielle Black. I have been attending Dream City Church my entire life. I'm 21 years old, and I just stepped into our youth pastor position at the Scottsdale campus about 9 months ago, and I was the youth coordinator part-time there for a year before that. So I've been working in ministry for almost 2 years, and it's been awesome. So yeah.
And so you graduated college from SCU, right? How long ago was that?
Yes,
Last
that
year?
was, a month ago.
Oh, just in this
Yes, just finished.
time, yeah.
I know. Yeah, crazy.
Okay, so you just graduated this spring.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yes, so we're going to talk about, I was saying that one of the reasons I explained this to Gabrielle, that I didn't get saved until I was an adult. And I remember when I first got saved, came to know the Lord, I was very on fire, and I had because I had been raised completely without any kind of church at all. I didn't, none, zero. So it was all brand new, and this was before I had kids, and I remember watching other people, other young adults, struggling with their faith, that they had grown up in the church, or in a church, right? Not necessarily this church, but they had grown up in church, and they were struggling to have a solid relationship. And I remember thinking, I want to try to prevent that with my kids when I have kids, that they would have a solid footing as they grew up and as they got older. And then as I grew, learning that's our responsibility, right, as parents, to train up our children in the way that they should go, and to make that foundation. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Yeah. So you were one of those kids that grew up in the church, right? Growing up here all the time, right? So just explain a little bit about that, what you were talking to me about earlier, about your parents and how that happened, what that was like growing up in church.
For sure. So my parents are both first-generation Christians, kind of similar to you. They didn't start walking with the Lord until later in their life. And so I think, kind of same as you, it was really, really important for them, for their kids, to be raised in the church and to, see church as a priority and as a place to be. And so that really was my life. I grew up in a private Christian school, literally from 3 years old to 18 years old. I went to the same school. And then basically anytime the church doors were open, I was in it. My dad came on staff when I was 7 years old, but he had been serving for a long time before I was even born. And so both my parents were very involved in serving. I remember going to kids ministry, and my mom would be one of the teachers helping out in Sunday school. Right. And it was crazy because I don't want to say it felt forced, but it was like a way of life. It was like whenever church is open, we're there. We're going to show up. Right. And that was something so fun and exciting, and just I loved to. It was like school. I just wanted to go and be a part of it. And I remember even as I got older, finding out that there were kids around me that didn't go to church every week. I was like, wait, what do you mean you don't go to church every week? Like, this is what we do. Like, unless one of my family members is super ill, like, that's what we did. And so I was just super blessed to grow up in a household where my parents really prioritized that and making sure that we were always here. So.
Right. And more than one time a week, right?
Yes.
Multiple times a week.
Yes.
Yeah, that was how we were too with my kids, being there and having all of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stay in that life, right? In that. Because I think one of the things that I've seen is that people I think sometimes think that if they have their kids in church and they have their kids in Christian school like you, that they're going to automatically be okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be the sort of the success, ratio or whatever,
Right,
like that,
right.
like a prescription for success.
Right.
To be in those environments, but that's not really always the case, right?
No.
And you've seen that firsthand. You were able to get and stay solid and keep your faith and develop a faith of your own. But a lot of the students and people that you saw in your Christian school, right, were not that way.
100%.
Or growing up even in youth group,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there were, and it was just kind of the older I got, because even like there were some kids that, I had gone to kindergarten all the way through senior year of high school with. And it was just so easy for them to just go through the motions and just do what they had to do and check off the boxes. But you could just really tell that they didn't have a personal relationship with Jesus and, could go to Bible class every day and still not really live that. And I mean, same with youth group. Like, there were so many kids and so many incidences that would happen at camps every year or different things, and you could just tell like those kids didn't really walk with the Lord. So
yeah, I've been a camp. I've been with leaders at different events and through youth and fine arts and youth camp and kids camp and all of those, and seeing a lot of different things that are going on. And I mean, kids are kids, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna we all fall short. We all have sinned,
right.
And they're no exception to that, right? They're going to struggle.
Right.
So it requires more, because that doesn't necessarily mean, because we also know families, right, that are amazing who've had kids that have gone astray, right? And have gone away from the Lord or have not, or an entire family might be well, but there's one child that kind of goes off on their own. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that the parents have done anything wrong.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you can set those foundations, but we're all responsible for our own behavior and our own choices, right? Which is kind of what the topic of this is, right? Is how do you make your faith your own?
Right.
Because you can't slide on the coattails like you couldn't, right? You couldn't just ride on the coattails of your parents' faith. You had to make that faith your own.
Exactly.
And so when you see students that are struggling, that sometimes parents don't know what to do. They don't know how to, but because I know in different youth groups and in, homeschool groups and Christian schools, you have drugs, you have pregnancy, you have criminal activity, like all kinds of things, right? I mean, you were telling me you've seen some of the, I don't know if you want to share any of those, but not any specifics with names or anything. But
yeah, I remember my junior year at my high school that I went to was maybe a month or two out from graduation, and I was a junior, and there was a senior that had gotten caught dealing drugs to most of his class, to some kids from my class, as young as middle schoolers that were infiltrated with it. And so many kids didn't get to graduate that year, and or were on severe suspension for the majority of the rest of the year. But yeah, you really can't, you can't escape the world. It's we live in it. And so I think it's figuring out, and I think it can be a little bit different for each kid and how they respond to different things, but figuring out, okay, how can I almost create a safe environment for my kids to be able to ask different questions about different things that are going on, and how do I navigate, okay, what happens when my child asks me this, or how can I make sure that they can feel even safe to me, coming to me when they get caught in something that maybe they weren't supposed to do. Something that I loved about the way my parents raised me is, from a very, very young age, they would tell me, we trust you until we don't. And if you lose our trust, you're going to have to work to earn that back. But my parents were always like, if you're ever caught in a bad situation, doesn't matter what time of day, what time of night, call us. We'll come and get you. No questions asked.
Right.
Just creating a really safe environment where I wasn't scared to mess up if I did mess up, but I wanted to earn their trust, and I wanted to just honor and glorify God through that too. So
yeah. And I think that's important, and we'll talk some about some of those things too in a little bit. But so you were called into ministry at a pretty young age, right?
Yeah, when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, and
crazy.
That is crazy. And so 12 years old and you're now 21. So yeah, do the math on that, right? 9
Right.
years, I guess. And having that calling at such a young age, and now you're living out that calling.
Yeah.
But some of the experiences that you had, we were talking about this, you had things, whether it was fine arts, youth camp, opportunities here at the youth group to speak. How did those things help nurture that?
Yeah, for sure.
In you?
Well, I remember it was my first youth camp that I ever went to when I was called into youth ministry. I was 12 years old, and I did not want to go. Like, was so adamant. It was our final year we were going to California camp, and it was 6 hours away, and I had barely been away from my parents before, and I was just like, I'm not going. And my friends, my youth pastor, my youth court, everyone was trying to convince me, but my parents were like, well, she doesn't want to go, we're not going to make her go. And so it was 2 days before we left for camp, and my youth pastor calls up my dad and was just like, hey, I feel like she really should go to youth camp this year. Like, just try to give her one more nudge. Like, we will put her in whatever cabin she wants to be in with whatever leaders, and like, we'll make all the accommodations, but like, you should really just try one more time. So my dad comes up to me and he's like, I really, really feel like you should go. And he's like, if you spend 24 hours there and you hate it, I will pick you up and we'll go home and I'll get you. So I was like, all right, I will go. And I bawled like a baby the morning of. I was like, don't make me go. And my parents are like, you're going to have so much fun. It's going to be awesome. And so yeah, I got on the bus, and, within the first 24 hours, I was like, parent too. Like, this is the best week of my life, and enjoyed it so much. But it was the last night I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit. Like, I cannot, like, it's hard to put into words, even 9-10 years later, just the encounter that I had with the Lord. And it's crazy because, like, as a youth pastor now, I look at my students that are 12 years old, and I was like, wow, like, they are literally babies in my eyes. Like, they're so little. And just for me at that age to have an encounter with the Lord and to really just have a burden and a weight on my chest of like, wow, this generation needs the Lord so bad. And just God giving me that burden almost to be like, hey, let's go figure this out. Let's go work and help the next generation find my love and experience the same thing that I had experienced that day. Because I was like, man, if everyone could just experience this encounter that I had with the Lord, like, it would change the world. And so it was crazy being called into youth ministry at the youngest age you can be in youth. So it was like I had no game plan. I really had no next step. I was like, all right, like, I guess God's just going to open the next door when the next door needs to be opened. Yeah. And it was a year later that I was asked to intern for our youth ministry every single summer. And so it was like, man, it was from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it was not glamorous. I mean, I was cleaning out filing cabinets, organizing different things, cleaning the youth cages with all the camp stuff, and just, it wasn't anything exciting. Like, I hadn't really started speaking or preaching yet, but I was like, okay, like, I believe that this is honoring God with what I'm doing, and that this is going to teach me how to do my job later. And I don't know why, but like, this is what I think is going to happen. And then I started getting involved into fine arts when I got a little bit older, and that was so awesome too, because I was like, oh my gosh, there is a category where I can literally practice how to public speak and how to preach, and I could get feedback and get criticism, and like, people could be like, hey, you should try doing this, or hey, you should slow down when you're speaking, or different. Right. And I was like, wow, this is such an awesome opportunity. And obviously fine arts is a competition, but just didn't really view it like that. I was like, okay, like, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to hone in on this skill and this talent that the Lord has given me, because obviously that's the purpose of fine arts, and that's why we do it, right? To glorify God with our talents. And so it just, honestly, so many things moving at once, just being able to intern, doing fine arts every year, and just slowly but surely getting more speaking opportunities throughout my youth ministry, something that I was so thankful for that I even try to implement now as a youth pastor is I had so many youth pastors that were in my corner and that saw the fire within me and saw this passion that I had and were like, okay, what can we do to help? Like, what can we do to continue to keep that passion alive and to give any resources? And so it was, I think by the time I was 16 or 17, I was being asked to preach full-length messages. And that was an awesome opportunity too. And, you know, I look now as a youth pastor now, I'm like, wow, they were so bold and they believed in me so much, because that is so crazy.
Right. When you think about it, it is.
Yeah. But just, you know, I was called into ministry and knew that the Lord had purpose and intention with every single season that I was going to walk through. And I can look back now and say, God had his hand and had intention and purpose with every single thing that I walked through. And every single thing brought me to becoming a youth pastor at 21. And obviously this is not even close to the end, but I'm just so honored and so grateful for everything that the Lord has done for me in that. So, yeah.
I love that. And, you know, as you were talking, I thought of two different things, because my daughter, my youngest daughter, Eden, has had a similar experience in being handed these really big responsibilities at a young age. I mean, she's been just finished up with doing kids, the talent camp, right? And she's been writing the full-length scripts for those since she was like 15, you know, and doing, I mean, I think actually younger than that, because she's 20 now and she's been doing it for 5 or 6 years, coaching, you know, 50 kids and doing that. It's like, when you think about it on that level, it's crazy to give someone, but obviously, seeing something in you, leaders have seen something in her, and to be able to give that, you know, responsibility, but also just the opportunity to be able to hone those gifts and use them
100%,
and to trust that God is going to use young people, right? Because he does.
100%.
He absolutely does. And are you coaching fine arts this year?
Am.
Okay.
Yes.
What categories do you coach?
I'm coaching human video this year, and then I'm also the conflict manager over fine arts too. So
that speaks for itself, right?
Yes.
Yep. You got a group of people, there's always going to be conflict.
Right.
In any group. But, yeah. So it just be allowing leaders and adults to pour into kids, into students, and give them tips and encourage them and opportunities to hone those gifts.
Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes adults don't always see that youth, they have that. They can have, they don't all, but they can have that fire and be able to be capable to do that, right?
It's like it's a pet peeve of mine when there are adults out there that view kids ministry or view youth ministry as just like, oh, this is childcare.
It's babysitting.
Like, oh, I'm giving my kids something to do on a Tuesday night, on a Wednesday night, on a Sunday, like, you know, because I'm like, oh my goodness, it is so far from that. And I think about the verse, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example. And that was something that I really took to heart from a super young age, and was like, well, if these people don't think I can do it, I'm going to show them that I can do that. And I'm going to show them that the Holy Spirit lives within me, and that he has given me a gift and he has given me a talent. And anyone that is willing to give me the microphone, give me the opportunity, you know, such a blessing.
Right.
But yeah, it's crazy to me that, you know, there are people out there that just don't see the importance of youth ministry or don't see the importance of kids ministry, because it, just like me, it was one encounter with the Lord that completely changed my life. Just one encounter. Right. And so when, you know, we try to speak a lot in youth ministry about how it doesn't have to be at a camp, it doesn't have to be at Fine Arts Nationals or districts to have that. It can be on a Tuesday night at 6:30 if your heart desires it.
It can,
and so,
Yeah, I mean, I had my encounter with the Lord was alone in my house, right?
Right.
And you look at like Samuel being called when he was young, he was asleep, right?
Yes,
he was in bed.
Right.
So God can speak and call you anywhere, right? But you do have biblical examples of young people being 100%. Called into ministry and stepping out in faith. I love that. And then the other thing that I forgot the other thing. I had another thing that your story reminded me of, and now I can't think of it. I think it had to do with hearing that voice, right? And being confident of hearing that voice, right? So how did you know that it was the Lord speaking to you?
Yeah. Obviously grew up in a Christian home, grew up in church, and fully believed of like all of this stuff that I was being told, or all of the Bible stories that I would hear about. Fully believed that, and did not deny it. But I would say there was just an innocence and like a pureness of heart, to where when like I felt like the presence of God, it was like, whoa.
Right.
I've never felt or encountered something like this in my entire life. And it was funny because I had a leader come up to me right before, and she told me, she was like, the Lord wants to tell you something right now. I'm like, what do you mean he wants to, like, what is he going to tell me? Like, how's he going to tell me? And she just told me, she was like, just open your hands in a receiving matter and just say, Lord, I'm here to receive whatever you have for me. And it was after I mumbled those words under my breath that it was just this presence, this peace that washed over me. And it just felt like, it was like this satisfaction that was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Right. This is what I'm supposed to encounter with my life. Like, this is what, like, it was just this, like, clarity. It was like, and you would think in an instance like that, if it wasn't God, there would be so much confusion, or so much, oh my goodness, like, wait, what's happening right now? Why is this? But it was like, no, I didn't have any of the answers. I didn't have even a next step from that. But I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I know it 100%, and the Lord's going to bring me to it. And that's kind of the thing too, is it's like, I knew that if for whatever reason it wasn't the Lord's will, it wasn't going to come to pass.
Right, because he does confirm as you go.
Exactly,
right?
For sure.
And all those different things that happened with giving opportunities to speak and seeing that play out, right? That God will move those things together if it is a word from him.
Exactly.
Yeah. I asked you that because I think a lot of people struggle with knowing that they've heard God's voice, and they wonder what that,
and I think honestly, it's harder the older we get, because we really try to complicate it or make it super hyper spiritual. And it's like, well, these 3 things have to happen in this order, and then I will know it's a sign from God. And it's like, the Lord, he doesn't taunt us. He doesn't, do things or put things in place to confuse us. It's like, when it's his perfect timing and when it's time for his will to be revealed to us, if we have an open heart and we're just saying, God, I'm ready to receive, he is going to honor that. And he's going to bless that.
Yeah. I love that. So in all of this, what can parents and grandparents do to help children in their lives, right? Whether this is their own kids or their grandkids, or if they're just young people that might be in their life that they have a connection with. Right. What would you say is, what can we do to help foster that making faith their own, right? Because this is what I just want to go back to that title that we had, right? That it's not enough to just go to church, check boxes, right? You have to have what you were talking about, right? With having the heart that is poured out to God and making faith personal and making it your own, right? But how do we as adults encourage young people to do that? And to help them?
First, I would say, and it sounds kind of cliche, but just to pray consistently and constantly for them. Both of my parents are prayer warriors, and I found this out way later in my life, but, from the time I was born, my parents would be outside my door, hands on my door, praying for me and, praying for the future and just praying for health and for wellness. But, anytime.
Spouses.
Yes, always spouses, yeah. But anytime I have, just been struggling spiritually or been like, because there have even been moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, I know I'm called to this, but I feel like I'm never going to get there, or I'm never going to accomplish it. Where my parents would just pray heaven down for me and just ask the Holy Spirit to speak to me, to give me clarity, to, give me a peace, to give me perseverance, to keep going. And prayer is so powerful, and it works. And the Lord hears us, and he sees us. And so, it sounds cliche, but just to pray for those kids, continue to ask the Lord to just bombard their lives, to bring different people. Sometimes I try to encourage parents, sometimes your kids aren't always going to receive it from you, and that's okay. Yes. But praying for the right people to encounter their lives, and to be like, you could tell your kids to go to church 1,000 times and they won't. And then there's one person that's like, hey, come to church with me. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. Like, just totally, just because their parents told them they want them to do it, and they're like, well, I'm not going to do it because mom and dad want me to, Right. And so I would first just say, pray and just believe that, the Lord is going to encounter them, and just remembering that, like, we serve such a kind God, and he sees us and he hears us, and he wants just as much as you do for your child to encounter him and to have that relationship with him. And so that would be my first kind of tip. I would say secondly, in your household, make sure that your kids know that, the Lord is at the center and is the priority of your house. I know for me, like, going to church was non-optional. It was like we were always at church. And I remember even when I was in high school, I started to play basketball, and one of the schedules on Wednesday night was our late night practice. And I give my dad the schedule, and he's like, well, you're either not going to basketball practice on Wednesday night, or you're going to find a different youth group to go to throughout the week. And it was just like, we're going to go and make Christ the center of our lives, and there's nothing else that's going to come before that or above that. And that was, so powerful, I think, in our lives, just to, like, view the church as such just another family. Like, there would be times where I would be struggling in my life, and I would think to go to my youth pastor or my youth coordinator before I would think to go to my parents, because maybe it was a little embarrassing, or, I just wanted a younger person to speak to it. But, different things like, talking about at the dinner table, like, hey, what did you guys read in the Word today? Or, hey, this is what I read in the Word today. Or, on the way home from church, being like, okay, what did you guys get from that message? Making it applicable to their lives, and just, making it a consistent topic of conversation, and being a safe person for your kids to be like, well, I have questions about this, or I didn't really understand that. I was like the most curious kid in the world. Like, I would come home from school, from Bible class, and be like, my teacher talked about this, and I have no idea where he got that from. Or come home from youth and be like, I didn't really understand that. And my parents were the first to be like, okay, well, let's open up the Word of God and let's talk about it, or let's figure it out. And just being that person where your kids feel safe and feel like, okay, I can bring my doubts, I can bring my questions, I can bring the things that I learned about and how I want that to apply to my life. Yeah. And so, that's really important too.
Yeah, I love that. And I did think of the other thing that I was going to say was about serving. Yeah. Because I heard that in your story, and I know that is 100% true for me. In fact, I've talked about it on another episode, but about how, you just step in and do things that come before you to do. Right. And you don't necessarily know where they're going. Right. Or what you're learning about them, and they're not glamorous. Yes. Right. You just are serving and doing something, helping something. But I know that God, in my life, God used those things to take me where he was taking me. Yes. And to build what he would, the experiences and the connections and the relationships and the things that I learned. Looking back, I can see them at I just felt like, oh, I'm supposed to go help stuff bags at something, or set up chairs, or whatever it was, right? Yes. It was never anything glamorous. Yeah. And you were talking about that, cleaning out filing cabinets and doing those things. But I think those small acts of obedience, God uses those to direct us, and to help us to see and learn. Yes. What I was listening when you were telling your story.
Well, and I was I was so honored for them to ask me to be an intern. Like, they could have told me to lick the floor and I would have done it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, to me, like, that felt one step closer to my calling. And so, you know, there would be times where, like, I'd be by myself in a room and just listening to worship music and just talking to God while I was doing that, and even just strengthening my relationship with him in that way. But yeah, God, you know, he sees the obedience, and he sees, like, when we do, you know, the little nitty-gritty things that no one else is ever going to notice. Or, you know, even for me, I was thinking, if this is a burden I can take off of someone's load, I will willingly do it. And, you know, even now as a youth pastor, I am so thankful for those people that are even in my life now that are willing to do stuff like that, because it impacts me way more than I ever realized when I was an intern doing that for my youth pastor. And so, yeah, God, he honors that and he sees that. And so it's a very big blessing.
And he uses it, I think, to kind of direct your
100%.
steps.
100%.
Yeah. So what else, as far as advice? So we talked about advice for parents or adults, but as if you young people, like what kinds of things do you think? We just talked about serving, but what else are some habits or things that you can suggest to young people that maybe are trying to figure out what their calling is and where they're going? Or to fulfill a calling that they already feel like they have.
I would first say, and we were kind of just talking about it, but just to get plugged in and get plugged in wherever the opportunity opens itself up. You know, obviously, if you feel called to a specific ministry, go to that ministry leader and just say, hey, what can I do to help? If it's passing an offering bucket, pass an offering bucket. If it's leading a small group, lead a small group. If it's, you know, doing something a little more meticulous, like what I was doing, interning and different things like that, say yes to every opportunity. Because like what we were just talking about, like, you never know how the Lord will be able to use that. And even what people you might not think are watching you, but are seeing your obedience within that. And when we are obedient in the small things, God can continue to pile up that plate and continue to bless us and trust us with bigger and bigger opportunities. And so, especially if you know where that is, I would say to serve. But even if you don't, going to different ministries and trying different things out and seeing, okay, well, I really, really didn't enjoy that, so maybe that's not exactly where I'm supposed to be. Let me go see if there's, you know, just
that's what I did when I first came to the Lord. I just served everywhere until I found my place.
And, you know, kind of like what I said earlier, if our hearts are just open to saying, God, like, speak to me when this is right, or make it known to me, he's going to make it known to you, and he's going to reveal himself in that way. Secondly, you know, it was funny. I was thinking about it after we were talking, and it sounds, I think, a little bit girly when I first say it, but I started picking up journaling about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was just kind of on a whim. It was at the beginning of the year, and, you know, I would pray before I would go to bed, and I would get so sidetracked and think about so many different things, and then I would fall asleep, and I would have barely had a conversation with God. And so I started this thing where I was like, well, I'm just going to journal before I read my Bible every day, and just date it and just say, hey, God, and it could be about anything. I have journal entries where I just told God about what was going on that day, whether it was, you know, the beginning of the day and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do today, or the end of the day and be like, okay, this is what I did. Sometimes it was like me outraged and just being like, oh my gosh, God, why is this happening right now? What do I do? You have to give me wisdom. You have to give me discernment. You have to come through, because I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, sometimes it was just pleas of, you know, God, help me. Like, God, come through for this. God, do you even see me right now? God, are you even listening? But it's so crazy, because I will look back over the years and just see how God showed up in every single entry that I wrote. And whether it was thanking him for the opportunities that I was getting, or being super mad at him for what was going on in my life, just being able to be like, wow, this is like, these are tangible prayers that I can tell you that the Lord has answered and the Lord has come through. And I think that can help just have like a more personal relationship with the Lord, right? Like, that he's not just this, it was like I'm writing letters to God. It's not like, oh, I can't see him or I can't feel him, but I was like, all right, God, this is what's going on right now, whether it's good or bad or ugly or sad or depressing, like, this is what's happening. And I feel like even when I would write that and then go in to read my Bible, like he would speak to me immediately. And, sometimes it wasn't always like that. Sometimes I would have a dream, or, someone would come up to me the next day and, tell me something that I needed to hear from that entry the day before. But I think regardless if you're male or female, like that is such a healthy way to like express ourselves to the Lord, and to personalize, like, okay, I'm talking to God, my friend, not just God who's my authority, but a God who cares about me and a God who sees me even when I feel like he can't see me. And so that would be something that,
and then you can look back and see what you were saying.
Yes, 100%. I would say one more thing, also kind of cliche, but I would say really, really getting plugged in to your age group's ministry, whether that's going to youth ministry if you're a youth student, or going to young adults if you're a young adult, or, going to main service if you're an adult, finding different small groups, just finding different ways to get connected. I think sometimes, especially when we're called into ministry, we can think, well, I have all the answers figured out, or I just want to go and, only be in that ministry and pursue what the Lord has for me. But it's important to always remember, like, we are growing as humans every single day, all day, 24/7. We still always fall short. We still always need fresh vision and fresh revelation from the Lord. And so just prioritizing finding a community that you can confide in and that can really support you and pray for you too.
Yeah.
So
no, that's good. And then obviously reading your Bible and praying.
Yes, 100%.
Having a daily habit of that.
100%.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else that you can think of that I feel like we covered everything.
I think we did too. Yeah.
It's so good. Thank you so much for coming today
and
talking to me.
Yes.
I appreciate it. I don't think we've had a conversation this long ever.
I know.
What have I been missing out on all this time?
Well, it's so fun.
Because it was great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify, and follow us on social media to find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.